That's not fair. All these nutritious toppings for the Ecuadorian potato soup, but nothing for the German one? We gotta fix that. Let's put in Germany's secret weapon here. Now we're talking. Definitely a closer game now. The potato soup, a fundamental dish in many cultures around the world that goes by the names Kartoffelsuppe in Germany and Locro de Papa in Ecuador. Despite having the same base ingredient, the good old potato, these two dishes probably couldn't be more different as they happen to use local ingredients grown in contrasting climate zones. Both are staples in their home countries, so let's make them in this episode. We begin with the recipe for Kartoffelsuppe, for which I'm using a leek, a few carrots as well as celery root. You can also use the celery stalks if you prefer, but they will probably give your potato soup a dominating celery taste, whereas celery root has a rather mild aroma. We will use a quarter of this celery root, some carrots and a medium-sized onion. Chop up celery and carrots into 2 centimeters or 1-inch size cubes and roughly slice the onions like this. Don't throw away the scraps, you can use them for a vegetable broth. Next up, a leek, which we will cut where the dark green leaves begin. Wash them and add to the veggie scrap pile. The white and light green part of the leek we will use for our soup. Cut off the leek base, perform a partial horizontal slice till the middle, open up and wash it properly. You don't want these sandy particles in your potato soup. Roughly cut, set aside and move on to 600 grams of mealy potatoes, which you quickly peel and chop. I used russets and cut them evenly so they will be done more or less at the same time when cooking. Lastly, we will need a proper vegetable broth. If you can't get your hands on a packaged one like this, I highly suggest that you make your own broth with the vegetable scraps that you would throw away otherwise. Just dump everything into a big enough pot, including the onion skin, which will give your broth some color. Add a few cloves, 2 bay leaves and a few black peppercorns. Fill up with water and cook over medium heat for at least 30 minutes, better 60. Remember to put on the lid of the pot or the water will be all evaporated. Get a bowl, sieve and a cheesecloth or kitchen towel ready, through which you will run the liquid in order to get rid of any unwanted particles. If you go for a reusable kitchen towel, it shall be clean and not treated with any chemical softeners, which will not only distort the taste of your vegetable broth, but also most probably be bad for your health. That said, run the liquid through and you end up with a tasty homemade veggie broth made of scraps that you otherwise would have thrown away. Now let's start cooking our first potato soup, for which we place a pot over medium heat, sprinkle a tablespoon of vegetable oil in it and sweat the onions for a few minutes till translucent. Sprinkle some salt on top, which will help to dehydrate the onion and help prevent them from browning, which we don't want in a Kartoffelsuppe. Add the celery root and carrot and continue sweating together for a minute, and last but not least, let the leek join the party. Mix well and soon enough the frying sound will get more intense, which is a sign that most of the water evaporated and browning is about to start. Dump in the potatoes, topped with a teaspoon of freshly ground nutmeg, which by the way seems to be mandatory in many German soups, such as the asparagus cream we did last year. Add a liter of vegetable broth, which should cover all ingredients, and bring to a slight boil. Depending on whether or not the vegetable broth is rich enough for your taste, you can add a bay leaf and or 2 cloves. Cook over medium-low heat, covered with a lid, till the potatoes are fully cooked. Occasionally stir and don't let the veggies scorch. It took around 25 minutes in my case and the potatoes got soft enough to be easily mashed. Remove the bay leaf, mix in one last time and turn off the heat before grabbing your electric hand mixer and pureeing the vegetables well. You should end up with a consistency on the thicker side. If too thick though, add some more vegetable broth to your liking. Finish off by seasoning to taste with some more salt and freshly ground black pepper and let rest covered for a few minutes before serving. If you're not a vegetarian and prefer some meat in your soup, add a frankfurter or 2 or any other parboiled sausage to your potato soup. Next up, the star from Ecuador, Locro de Papa, for which we will need the same amount of mealy potatoes, also cut into 1-inch or 2 cm thick cubes. The next ingredient was just delivered to our doorstep and came all the way from Central America, annatto seed powder, which I was told is a very popular ingredient in Latin American cuisine and has a subtle, sweet, nutty, lightly peppery flavor. We will mix it with some vegetable oil according to package instructions and end up with some achiote oil that we can use to cook our Ecuadorian potato soup, for which we drop 20 grams of butter and 1.5 tablespoons of our achiote oil into the pot and heat up over medium heat. Finally slice the spring onion without its dark green part and saute for a few minutes. Add 2 teaspoons of salt and cumin powder each, some freshly ground black pepper and crush in a garlic clove. Once fragrant, after a minute max, drop in the cubed potatoes and coat them in the ingredients. Continue sauteing for a few more minutes. It's okay for the potatoes and onions to caramelize caramelize and stick to the pot, contrary to the German soup version. This will yield a richer and more complex flavor profile for Locro de Papa, but make sure to only caramelize, not to burn the veggies. A few minutes in, when some foam build up on the bottom of the pot, deglaze with 750 milliliters or 3 cups of warm water and scrape off the good stuff. The water should cover the potatoes. Bring to a boil, reduce the heat to medium-low and cook covered with a lid till potatoes are fully cooked. Occasionally mix and make sure not to scorch the ingredients. I had the heat too high and didn't check in on my potatoes for 30 minutes, which led to the water evaporating and slightly burning my potatoes, so do better. Once potatoes are fully cooked, add a cup of milk, mix well and let simmer covered for 5 more minutes. In the meanwhile, grate or cube your white cheese of choice and finally mash some of the potatoes with your weapon of choice. Don't fully puree them, definitely leave some chunks to bite on. If you're gonna serve all of your Ecuadorian potato soup right away, you can already drop in some of the white cheese into the pot and give everything a final mix. We are going to put plenty of toppings on our Locro de Papa, such as fresh cilantro, avocado and moreover cheese. Now let's plate our 2 potato soups from 2 totally different parts of the world and finish off garnishing them. The German potato soup only gets a sprinkle of fresh parsley, whereas its Ecuadorian counterpart is going to be spoiled with a few slices of perfect avocado, crumbled feta and some mozzarella. Some recipes ask for queso blanco, some for queso fresco. I used both, sort of, by substituting with low moisture mozzarella and some Greek feta. Finished off with chopped cilantro, I already know without having tasted them which soup will come off victorious. The Locro de Papa is so rich and partly roasted from caramelizing the onions, and the nutritious toppings with a nice contrast of freshness from the cilantro and avocado and the richness of the cheeses and soup itself. It's really enjoyable. Confidently I can rate the Ecuadorian potato soup dish 8 out of 10, which really begs the question, can this still be considered a soup? This is what I usually consider a soup, an anything but mind-blowing dish with subtle aromas coming from the broth and sweating, not caramelizing the vegetables. And this is not a fair comparison though, since this version of Kartoffelsuppe is not only missing more aromatic vegetables such as celery sticks, but also is vegetarian. Usually German potato soup also includes a protein, which by some is considered the backbone of German cuisine, a parboiled sausage such as Frankfurter. This definitely helps, but it's still not enough to close the gap to the Ecuadorian potato soup, as my personal palate can give the German potato soup only a 6.5 out of 10 points. I hope you get a chance to try both of them, and if you like the Ecuadorian potato soup as much as we did, you will probably take it into your weekly meal rotation, as it's not only super tasty but also super easy to make. Guten Appetit and buen provecho!